Alrighty, so I lost a little bit of a video, and so I'm going to start back, and we're looking at getting ready to look at Mead's three stages of self-development, and again the importance of role taking, the ability to step outside of one's selfish position and put yourself in the role of others, and to perceive yourself in that role as well as how that role would react back towards yourself is an important step for me in terms of our ability to become fully functioning social selves. We have to learn to empathize with others, and especially the roles they're in, and how it's, if we say that by empathizing with other people in other roles, by having that empathy, then we're able to adjust our behavior in terms of how we should interact with that person. And this is something that's very complex. For me, he felt that role taking was the essence of being a human being in many ways. He said if we weren't able to go through these three stages of self-development, especially that last stage of the game stage, that we would be we would not be able to function normally in society. So he takes that role taking very seriously. The I and me, me developed the I and me. Basically, he took a lot from Freud's theory of self-development. The superego, the ego, and the id. And he talks about the I and me as these are internal states. He calls it the internal conversations that go on in our selves all day long. We're generally not very conscious of it. But you can become conscious of it once you learn about it. But he says that there's basically these two voices that are always contending with each other. He said the I, which is akin to Freud's the id, is that childlike self within us, that child selfish position that we take, propensity. I want my share. It's all mine, mine, mine. Little children will, say it's sort of a selfish part of ourselves. Very spontaneous. It's the creative, as well as the destructive energies of the inner psyche, if you will. So Mead says that the I has to be managed or channeled. The energies have to be channeled in order for there to be civilization. It's kind of like Freud's theory is the same way. If the id's out of control, or for me, if the I is running things, civilization would be impossible because everybody would be just out for themselves, totally 100%. They could care less about role taking, what people think about them. But that's not the case for 99% of us. And he says that's because of the me. And the me is, as we'll see here in just a second, is like the generalized other. It's the internalization of the voice of society within our psyche, within our mind. And it starts out with being our parents or significant others, and later as we maturate into the full functioning self and internalize the generalized other, then for me that's the development of the me. The me is the voice of the society, if you will. It's society's norms, values, beliefs, but certainly norms is a big part of the me. And that's the do's and don'ts that we learn through socialization. And through that process, we put a brake on the me. Not 100%, but in many situations during the day, we rely on the me to put a brake on behaviors. The I, you can think of sort of that knee-jerk reaction we have to people and situations. You get an F on an exam, and you come into class, and the I is the reaction. You feel all of a sudden a need to shout at the professor as maybe an insult. I know a graduate student one time that threw a book at a teacher one time. Didn't get him too far. Luckily, the teacher was sympathetic with him and had sympathy, but it took with him, right? Role taking, and kind of let him off the hook because he knew he was under a lot of stress in school, graduate school. But you want to react in a negative fashion, and it's that knee-jerk reaction, and the me comes in. It intercedes. Usually this happens within the flash of an eye. It says, no, don't do that. Think about your consequences. You're going to get expelled from university. You're going to get an F in the course. Don't do this. Cool off, right? You're going down the highway. You're speeding to get to work, and yet you've already had a couple of speeding tickets. And, the eyes just putting, I got to go. I got to get there. Out of the hell with the speed limit. And the me saying, no, slow down. You're going to lose your driver's license. How are you going to get to work then if you lose your driver's license? So slow it down and just take your time. So that's the interaction that goes on all the time between the I and the me. And me says that it's this me that puts a brake on that rapacious, creative, and many times destructive side of the id or the I. And so me is essential for me, for civilization to even be possible. Is that human civilization is possible because we share these norms and values that we've internalized from society, and it puts we've learned to role take and have empathy with others, so that we're not living totally selfishly, avoiding what other people feel or perceive about us. We do take into account on a daily basis of what others think about us, and if I do these certain behaviors, that's going to put me in a bad light. And so what do? We conform to the norms, the expectations of society, so that we can get positive feedback from our environment. Because most human beings, 9 times out of 10, we want positive feedback from others. We want to fit in. We want to belong. Even though our society says we're so individualistic and on our own kind of deal, on bootstraps, that's pretty much fiction from a sociological standpoint. We tend to conform our behavior to others. In most situations, even if we belong to a deviant subculture. Let's say you joined a gang because of whatever your cultural context or social context. Even in that situation, there's going to be an I and a me working, because many times we internalize the beliefs, but also the norms and expectations of behavior from our reference groups that we belong to. Those reference groups are the groups that are important to our self-identity. And if you belong to a gang, then there's going to be the do's and don'ts of the gang that you're going to have to conform your behavior to. So in many respects, that old Bob Dylan song, you're going to serve somebody, everybody's got to serve somebody, that's kind of like, that sort of touches base with the me. You can't escape it. And if you try to escape it too far along, you may end up in a psychiatric ward or a prison, or it's because you won't be tolerated very long. So for me, the I and the me and its kind of proper interaction of those voices, and especially the me putting the brake on the I, is totally important in being able to interact normally with others. Role taking, again, is this ability to step out of our selfish position into the statuses of others. And this is really where the individual gets hooked into society, if you will, if I may use that metaphor. How do we get drawn into society? How is the individual linked to the social, if you will? It's through this ability to role take. I can step outside of my selfish position, right? And I can put myself into role. Let's say I have that highway patrolman on the side of the road that's clocking the time of the cars going by. And my ability to put myself in their shoes and then to be able to perceive myself as I think they would perceive me, that really aids the me, right? The voice of the me. And I'll take it into consideration. Yeah, I better slow down, because I have empathy with that. I have a feel for what that highway patrolman is going to react when they see me coming by with that kind of speed on his meter, right? So role taking is very important for civilization to take place. That ability and the need to role take with others, to gain empathy with others. It's that whole notion to know your enemy in some respects. If you know what others are going to say, if you know what a professor's going to say, if you curse at them after you failed an exam, then you've taken that empathy with that role, and then it concerns you. The me is going to say to you, don't do that, because you know he's going to, or he or she is going to react in a negative fashion back towards you. So that's the importance of role taking. The me had the three stages of self development. The play stage, the first stage actually is called the preparatory stage. Then there's the play stage, and then there's the game stage. And Mead, what he's trying to show us is that through these three stages of self development, from early childhood up to young teenagers, this developmental stages, that it's all based on role taking. It's going from very simple role taking, imitation, over to full blown complex role taking in the game stages. We'll see. So the preparatory stages are young children. They have not developed the mental capacities to really role take because they're not really self-reflexive at this point. So what they do is they mimic and imitate significant others in their environment. A lot of times families have a big kick with the little ones. Let's say dad plays the guitar and he's been playing and singing for the family. Then the little one have a little play guitar, and they'll watch TV and see a band on TV, and they see that they get a lot of attention from the family, so they imitate the guitarist, and act like they're playing guitar and dancing, and family have a big time. They know they're getting your attention by imitating those behaviors. A little boy sitting next to his father being gender stereotypical, but a little boy sits next to his dad. Dad's reading a magazine. Little boy holds a magazine, and he can't read, but he's watching his father. He's imitating. At least he's imitating at playing a role. The little girl may do it with mother cooking in the kitchen with the pots and pans. She may be on the floor hitting the pans and pots, because she's imitating what mother's doing. And so for me, it's an important stage. It's imitating that, playing the role of others in the society. If you're in a hunting and gathering society, a little kid might be have a little playboy bow and arrow, and he, just imitating that, shooting the arrow. It's an important stage nonetheless, and this usually goes on up to about 4 years old, maybe even maybe less. The age break-offs are actually a little bit arbitrary because some kids develop quicker than others. But the play stage is the concept. Major concept is attached to the play stage is significant others. The play stage is a voluntary, often spontaneous activity with few or no formal rules. It's not subject to constraints of time and place. So it's just when our playing when we're kids, it's just out playing, and usually the role taking is simple duality of two simple roles like cops and robbers, mom and dad playing the parents, significant others in their environment. More so today with the media, superheroes on television or movies, and but a lot of times the content's the good guy, the bad guy. And they play it. At least they're stepping outside of their selfish position, and they're stepping into one of their culture's statuses, and they play at those roles, interacting with some other role, right? And so this way, they're stepping out of their selfish perspective, and this is how we get hooked into society. This is how the individual gets hooked in, if you will, or linked to society, is that we begin to play at the statuses of the society. Policeman, army person, mailman, mother, father, and by just playing at these, we're beginning to gain empathy for those social statuses, the norms attached to that status, and it means something to us. And then we can see how that status, that person, that role, how we might be perceived from that position, how to interact with the person. You can't rotate, you can't really engage others in social interaction, if you don't have any concern for the other person, or getting to know them, getting to have some sense of how to mold your behavior towards the other person if you don't know what their status is how you interact with let's say a minister or a priest, and then say a drill sergeant. It's two different roles, and you've got to have role taking ability to gain empathy for that position, so that you can at least have some sense of how they're perceiving you and how you should mold your behavior in order to be able to interact with that person or get positive tokens from that person. So it's a very important stage of being able to step outside of their selfish perspective and begin to simply role take at a few simple roles in everyday life. Mead says in it, and this usually goes on, 4 or 5, all the way up to 10, 11 years old maybe, and then we start getting in. It could be less years or more years. But the final stage of the self-development for Mead is the game stage. And for me, the game stage is the stage at which we become fully developed social selves. And he says only human beings, or as a species, it's the only species that's able to do this complex form of role taking is at the game stage. And he says at the game stage, and of course, using this notion of playing organized sports, for example, is just a metaphor. But we'll see how that extrapolates or relates to other areas of everyday life, organized life. But in the game stage, this is structured, organized activities that usually involve more than one person and a number of constraints, such as established roles, it's got established rules, established time, place, and outcomes. So in this sense, then, instead of just playing spontaneously, the young kids are asked to be at a certain place at a certain time. They got to learn their status in the game, along with learning all the rules and regulations, and attached to all the other positions in the game on the team, if you will. There's established roles that they have to learn. You have to learn. There's the rules of the game you have to learn, internalize. There's time limits. There's a place that it takes place, and there's certain outcomes to be expected. Structured. Complex role taking at this point. The main concept tied with the game stage is called the generalized other. So let me just give this briefly a little time. The game stage, Mead says that we begin to complexly take roles. Let's say we take the T-ball team, for example. The coach puts all the little kids out into their respective statuses, their positions out there on the field. Walks up to the T-ball stand and hits the ball out into the outfield. What's the next thing that happens? Well, 9 times out of 10, the little kids will just go running. Everybody goes running after the ball. Everybody leaves their respective positions. And, of course, the coach calls them back and says, no, we got to learn how to play the game. You got to stay on your positions. If the ball comes to you, then you've got to throw it to the second baseman, blah, blah. You got to learn all these moves. You've got to learn what's expected of your role in relationship to all the other roles. Let's say there's a person on third base, and the batter hits the ball to the shortstop. What's the next thing that's going to happen? What's everybody's role at that point? This is a very complex learning process. So if somebody's coming into first base, do you throw it home and then to first base, or do you throw it to first base and then to home to get a double out? How's that going to take place, right? So you've got to situate your role play with the role play of others. Everybody's involved. It's not just you. It's not just a simple. It may be a whole team. Like, think about a football team. They go into a huddle. The quarterback calls out a set of numbers, and if they've internalized their roles in that certain play, everybody pulls off their little piece in conjunction with others, and if it's done correctly, it looks like a ballet dance, right? It's all done. It's very beautiful and smoothly carried and executed, and you get a touchdown perhaps, or you gain 10 yards. But everybody, just by calling out that number, these human beings, they know how to coordinate their role with all the other roles on the team. And When that's done correctly, you have this, beautiful, as I say, this social event. Mead says at this stage, then the development of the fully functioning self is realized when we internalize the generalized other. What is the generalized other? In terms of the game, this would be the internalization of all the rules and regulations of the game. But that's just a metaphor. The generalized other is a system of expected behaviors, meanings, and viewpoints that transcend those of the people participating. So what he's talking about here is that regardless of the people participating, you have internalized your society's norms, values, and beliefs. And so that you now have this me in your head, if you will. I'm going to leave you with one of the best examples I can think of. In terms of Mead's 3 stages of development, the very young kid in the high chair spills the milk on the floor. And when he spills the milk or she spills the milk on the floor, they notice that mom gets upset about it and tells them, don't do that. So they know that they get a negative reaction out of their mother. So at this point, they've internalized. They know that, hey, when I spill this substance on the floor, it upsets my mother, right? It upsets this significant other. And that's fine and dandy, right? And then as they get older, get into the play stage or whatever, about that time they go off to elementary school, they find out, hey, in the lunchroom, they pour the milk out on the floor. The teacher gets all upset about it. And now it's not just mother's rule anymore, it's also the teacher feels that way. And of course, by the time we get to the generalized other, one finds out, hey, wherever I go, and I pour out liquids out on the floor. If I'm in the classroom, I take a bottle of milk that I've got brought into class with me and I pour it out on the floor. Everybody's going to be upset at me. Why? Because it was not just mom's ruling. It's the whole society looks at that behavior in a negative light. That's the me, right? Establishment of the me. It's the voice of society internal. And Mead says once we've got that down, once we've internalized that generalized other, then that person can go out into the world and go to, be in various situations with all kinds of various strangers and organizations, meetings, and be able to interact competently in that situation. The fully functioning self. And so for me, this is the sociological theory on self-development. I'm going to stop here. I may add a little bit more down the road on a few of these ideas. And if you have any questions about some of the concepts in this chapter on socialization, just shoot me an email and I'll certainly answer it for you. I'm here for you. So I'll talk to you later, and I'm going to go ahead and load these up. All right. It takes a while to do so. All righty.